There we go. Oh dear, we are in a mess. There we are. We're back, I think. Yes. And very happy we are to be back. We've got, oh gosh, this technology things. They do things that they never tell you in the manual is going to happen, and then you have to fight them through as best you can. Oh, stop it! let's get rid of this first, because that may be the one that's cocking it all up. Shall we? We got filters on and coming or going all over the place. It's quit there. Dear, we do have some fun with these things. We really do. The picture isn't so hot today. I don't know why. Yesterday it was great. So I am sorry. It comes and goes. What we do in this half hour, and we've been showing the bloody past of Chinatown. 8 episodes, and we've shown all 8 episodes. So we're going to, while we're getting ready to welcome Stuart Dolby back with his comments on the energy crisis, and to say hello again to Melissa Conti from New York. We're going to play you a little look back, and it's we call it the first program. It wasn't actually the first program that we did on Mirador, but it was one of the first where we got a little ambitious. So here it is, and then we'll be back in 20 minutes or so. Hi, welcome to Mirador Television. This is local TV, but probably not local TV as you know it. We don't have much cash, so for one thing, we have to do much of our stuff outside. We don't even have a studio. So we don't even have a weather presenter. But we will try to bring you the weather. So when you see me with an umbrella, it's raining. So when I have my walking stick, it's fine. If my hat blows off, it's windy. And if I'm wearing a bikini, it's hot. Not that you're going to see me in a bikini very often. The body's gone, you see. Not a pretty sight. But when it comes to mixed weather, well, we really have a problem. It's silly of us to serve up the same old rubbish that you can see on regular television, so we're serving up rubbish of our own. But I hope that it's nutty enough to bring you back to watch us again. Stick with us, Nutty TV. Now, what's what? What is a weekly look about the interesting things that happen in our town? Those of us who live here know about them, but to a visitor, they might find them very interesting. This is ancient Keir Street. It's said that in the early 1800s, the Prince Regent won a bet by driving a coach and four down it. The Norman Castle in Lewes, though small, is one of the oldest in the country. A wooden Saxon fort stood on the mound until 1080. Then William de Varenne, the first Lord of Lewes, built this stone bailey as his stronghold. A tiny castle for a tiny town. Famous celebrations of November the 5th. They're huge. Almost every one of the townsfolk takes part. He goes way back before the gunpowder plot, the Queen Mary's burning of religious martyrs in the centre of the town in 1556. Free beer? Of course not. But this pub, Brewers Arms, is one of several independently owned pubs in the town. At one time in the 1800s, Lewes had 63 pubs and 17 breweries, and just a population of 9,000, but no free beer. Well, there are the Mirador cameras trying to keep a visual record of what goes on in the town. The famous Bluebell Railway, 11 miles of track carrying lovingly restored steam trains from Sheffield Park, just outside Lewes, to East Grinstead. The line opened in 1882. As the name suggests, the railway runs through wonderful bluebell woods, worth every puff. This is indeed a rare sight. Southern Rail was on strike so frequently, trains in motion were not often seen. This is the annual raft race down the River Ouse from Lewes to Newhaven. It's more than 40 years old. Raises funds for charity and contestants build their own rafts and try to sink the opposition. staying with water, this is a lovely spot in Lewes known as the Pells. It was given to the town in 1603. It's the oldest operating swimming water pool in Britain. Lewes has several charming and interesting cafes, despite the presence of dull, uninteresting chain cafes in the town. The ports boast the best breakfast, and it's certainly very, very good. I can attest to that. Then there's the Runaway. Despite attempts by the rapacious railway barons to shut it, this bistro has been on Lewes Station for more than 30 years. Famous for its bacon sandwiches, Princess Di once stopped by for one. My favourite spot, especially at 6 o'clock on a summer morning, is the Priory. The building started in 1084, just 18 years after the Norman invasion. The Priory withstood the Battle of Lewes in 1264 and raids from the French during the 100 Years' War, but fell to the vandalism of Thomas Cromwell in 1535, as Henry VIII dissolved the monasteries. This is the Crown Court, and Assizes has been located in Lewes since early Norman times and has seen many famous trials. Finally, the stocks. Stocks have been used in Lewes for more than 9 centuries. Some say the punishment is still on the statute books. These are old stocks from around the country, but Lewes's stocks still sit in the grounds of the castle. Lots more interesting places in Lewes. If you live here, enjoy exploring. If you're a visitor, take a tour. We're rich in history. Oh, Jerry, what have you been up to?
Yeah, what's on then? Well, it may be a bit of fun, but what the heck? Anything else you want to know about what's going on in Lewes? There's a very good local publication, Viva Lewes, jam-packed full of information of places, events, and the happenings in this little town. Okay, time for my pal Jenry.
He never bring you down or leave you alone. Trust him all in all, 'cause he's the light.
A very good day to you. I'm Edward Stick, Esquire. If you stay around long enough with Mirador television, we'll see a lot of one another. This is Lewis Priory. Some people think it's just a pile of old stones. I suppose if you want to see it like that, you can. But between 1084 and 1537, it was a magnificent Cluniac Priory. It had its share of troubles. King William didn't want it built at all. Some of the monks and some of the buildings were roughed up when the Battle of Lewes spilled over into its grounds in 1264. The French attacked it during the 100 Years' War of the 14th and 15th centuries. King Henry VIII tried to pull it down in 1537. And the good citizens of Lewes looted the bricks and stones to build other grand houses and homes. But it's still here. These fascinating ruins tell a fascinating story. Their guardian is my friend Genry. Genry is a medieval knight who fought in the Battle of Lewes and now stands vigil over the buildings and grounds. We've become good pals, and he's agreed that over the next series of programs we should tell you about the Priory and the things that have happened here over the past 1,000 years. We also want to put it into context, so we'll mix in stories about Lewes under the Romans and its development with the Saxons. I hope we turn out to be good storytellers, because it's some story. And there's the added bonus of hearing the beautiful voice of our friend Yeva. Mixed in with some ghostly chanting monks and perhaps a little medieval music. I hope it's a program you'll pop in to see from time to time. Must go and see Genry now. We've a lot of planning to do. Okay, Yeva, sing us out. Doodle pip.
He never bring you down or leave you alone. Trust him all in all, 'cause he's the light. He'll lead your way through darkest of times. He'll never let you go. And he'll be there for you, and he'll be there for you.
Well, there you are. It was rough and ready, but it gives you some idea of what we started out to do pre-Brexit, and some of the things that we intended to do, some we've managed to do, and they're tucked away in the archives, and you will see a bit of them over the next 12 months. Some have still to be realised. But you might just have a background. What we say about Mirador television, which comes out of the White Hart Hotel, Lewes, East Sussex. The White Hart is a coaching inn. It's now about 600 years old, and still an active hotel. And it's where Tom Paine formulated much of the thinking of his rights of man, which in some ways furthered the cause of democracy, true democracy in this country. According to Bill Bryson, he once said to Benjamin Franklin when they were driving through the streets of London, is there, in that place, I would see a chamber for representation of the people called the House of Commons. Guess what it's called? And that was initiated by Tom Paine, who, as I say, wrote much of his theses about democracy, the rights of man, but also to the colonists, telling them to shuck off the yoke of monarchy and the so-called democracy, the second tier, if you like, which had nothing to do with the people, and to fight their way to independence, which they did. And then he is said, also by Bryson, to have coined the phrase the United States. So that's this hotel. And the hotel has got the copy of the Declaration of Independence with Tom Paine's signature on it, hanging in what is known as the Sheriff's Room, which is where much of the ceremony and some of the big dinners and the big parties take place in this town of Lewes. But we say about Mirador that we are local and not parochial, and we bring to you a whole range of people. We've had the head of MI5. We've had Vince Cable. We've had personalities from stage, screen, radio. Stuart Dolby brings some of his old mates in from his days as a journalist. So we are far from being parochial, but we are local. We come out of here, and we try to reflect what's going on in this town as well as the rest of the world. And I'm telling you that because that piece of music is by Yeva Suryan, that we play when we show programs about the Priory, was written by her sister, Yeva, and her sister, who, as she says, her name is unpronounceable because they are both Armenian. She calls herself Star Jackson, and Star wrote the lyrics, the music for that for her sister Yeva to sing, and I think it's a marvelous piece of music. In the two of them, and in fact, somewhere we've got tucked away in our archives a program in which Star tells us how she writes the lyrics and how her sister composes music, and her sister is in the Caucasus. Is a very, very well-known star, on top of which she runs a school for teaching young people how to use their voice. They are between them a formidable couple, and they fought very bravely to get the world to understand what was happening when they entered into a war with Azerbaijan. I suppose that is still going on because border issues in that part of the world are very sensitive. And strangely enough, of course, they border, Armenia particularly, borders onto Turkey. And Turkey is having its own chance at gaining world headlines at the moment. So that's the background to that music and to the two young ladies who write it and sing it and make a vital contribution to the world of music. And luckily, they've given us the right to play it whenever we wish. So it's very important that we recognize both the international aspects of what we do on Mirador. We're quirky. Oh, well, we're quirky. All right. You never quite know what we're going to do next. And I hope what we're going to do next is to have Melissa Conti in a minute because it's 10 o'clock. Stuart Dolby said he would drop by at some time around this time to give us a background on energy. So things are running to time, except I don't have the players. What often happens, that's when you have to put up with me. I relish the chance sometimes to have just a few minutes. I am famous for ranting. I'm famous for having a pop at everybody, absolutely everybody. And what is really getting up my nose at the moment is that in the 1950s, 1960s, when I was at school and at university, one of the things that we were taught was how to do things in a polite manner, how to show good manners, how to recognize if somebody had the courtesy to contact you, that you acknowledge it and send it back. Well, all that seems to have disappeared. And the trouble is it's disappeared at the top. I mean, even the cumbersome way in which you now get hold of your MP. And why? Yeah, because red tape. And MPs will tell you, oh, well, we try hard to get rid of the red tape for civil servants. Well, that's nonsense. That's utter nonsense. What they do is they import it. I still have a comment from our MP in which I spent a lot of my time, my money, and so on, trying hard to help the mental illness effort with one particular lady that I looked after and who was treated abominably by the people in charge of mental health in the district council. And I tried to invoke her aid. And I sort of got half-hearted stuff. And the last words that I got is when I actually asked for a little bit more help was, well done, Keith, keep it up. And that's the last that I heard. Oh, what you'll hear, the government, and you'll hear her, and you'll hear the opposition. It's not just her, it's all of them. They're all as bad as one another. You hear them talking about, oh, what they're doing for mental illness. It is bullshit. They are not doing anything for mental illness, except spending huge amounts of money. The mental illness bill a couple of years ago, what it is now, I don't know, was something like 14 billion. It was huge. And I can't see what the hell we're getting for it. I really can't. In fact, if anything, it's making it either worse or maintaining the status quo. Maintaining the status quo. And as one friend in London who also follows this sort of thing said, we have not made any advances since about 1920. And I can well believe it. But anyway, that's slightly off the point. The point is that in my dealings with the governance, industry, charity, other areas of our civil society, I have had absolutely stupendous rudeness and discourtesy. And they'll say, oh, well, we get 1,000 emails. I don't care. That's why we pay you, to look at those emails and to get back to us and to acknowledge, at least acknowledge. The acknowledgement that comes out of the computer is rubbish, absolutely rubbish. First of all, it's coming out of the computer, and it doesn't, one reply doesn't fit all. When are we going to start to teach our young people that courtesy is key to a civil society? I hear people sort of muttering in the street. Those people who are sort of middle class, if you like, wittering on about elitism and what the very top people do, and going to public schools and having favoritism shown and so on. So, well, they do sweet bugger all about it. And I have to say that since I've been, I don't come from a wealthy background, but I have had the pleasure of belonging to one of the elitist gentlemen's clubs, as they're called. And within those walls, you have courtesy, you have kindness, you have consideration, you have you have a scheme, a system which recognizes how to deal with your fellow man. And that has been lost in the rest of our society. So as far as I'm concerned is, yes, let us be elite. Because what we need is to have those people in charge, our leaders, and I don't care which country you're talking about, our leaders start to be courteous, start to be kind, start to be considerate, and not the haughty, arrogant people that most of them are. And particularly the arrogance of our MPs is, if we get defeated at an election, let's have a payout of 150 grand and a medal. I can't believe it. I really can't believe it. However, I'm the beast. Let's go to the beauty. Good morning, Melissa. Oops. Can you hear me or see me?
I can't see you.
Oh dear. It's probably because I punched the wrong button. There. Is that any better?
I can see you now, yes.
Right, but I can't see you. Let's try that. Well, you're there, but you're upside down. There we go. Lovely. We've made it at last. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Well, I'm okay. I mean, I know that I get you up at the most ridiculous hours of the morning, but somehow I always feel that I'm being very righteous in hauling myself out of bed at 5:30 to come in here 5 days a week and keep us going. And this has been a particularly good week. We've had some very interesting stories. The Britain continues on its slide, which you've actually noted. We are now about to become less important than NATO, than France and Germany. We've wasted all our bombs and bullets already on the Ukrainian war, and because our budget for armed forces has gone down, we can't make any more. You name it, we're doing it. And I've just been ranting while we were waiting for you about leadership. We don't have any. Leadership is something that has disappeared from the world, from our society. That's the way I feel about Britain. What about you in America? Have you got leadership?
No, we don't. We don't have it either. I think a lot of it is, I don't know. I guess we've become sort of a society, and I think we touched on this last week, where everything is very much about individual, me. And I understand to a certain extent we need to take care of ourselves, but when you're a public servant, I think what happens oftentimes is people with a lot of wealth, like Trump, for example. Let's take Trump, for example. Got a tremendous amount of wealth. He was very flamboyant real estate mogul in New York, and he doesn't understand what it is to be a public servant. That's just a completely foreign concept to him. They couldn't even imagine it. But yet he became the president. And so that's the issue. It's I have to be
Yeah.
when you're a leader, you have to be more selfless. You have to be more, I have to care about the people more than my image, more than my taxes, more than my wealth. It goes beyond that. And I just don't think we have any, I haven't seen too many people appearing that would be like that.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, I'm moving around because Stuart has appeared in the background, and he's going to join us. And I think that one of the international issues at the moment is energy, and he is appalled at some of the things that the international energy companies have been doing. In fact, he was doing quite a deep study on the weekend with the help of the Observer newspaper to see whether, in fact, there was corruption, mismanagement, or whatever. And since he understands things rather better than I do, he's going to give us a little chat about it in a little while. But I mean, he gets all shivery when he sees you. So I'm going to invite him in to join us for a three-way discussion. So come and sit down and talk to Melissa. It's good to see him back.
Well, first of all, they're not international companies; they're the local cartel of the 6 big energy companies.
Right.
And they are doing terrible things. And as I know who they are and what they're up to, we can actually have a go at them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll
do that later.
We'll do that a little later. Yeah. Because I'm incidentally, Melissa, writing in a lady who watches us regularly, writing in the local Facebook Lewis Present, said that there are 5 really great things about Lewis, and she names 1 or 2. Number 3 is Mirador Television out of the White Hart Hotel, and she says that we are a gem.
Actually, I can cap that. After the Speakers Festival, which we both went to,
right,
when Christina Lamb, as you know, was a very, very successful journalist who I started her career. Do you remember that?
Yes.
You were there, weren't you?
Indeed.
And then up on Facebook the next day, she said, it was so lovely to be invited to interview Stuart Dalby. Not only is he a great foreign correspondent, I like that bit.
Oh, yeah.
He's also my first ever foreign news editor. And he actually started my career. In fact, when I was foreign news editor, I sent her off to Afghanistan, you see. She knew Benahir Bhutto's, the daughter of Bhutto, and she was very infatuated by that series. And once she phoned up one time, and she said, Stuart, Bhutto has been shot down in a plane and he's dead. What shall I do? And I said, well, what you do is sit down and have a cigarette.
Bury him.
and then you say what, where, when, why, and how. And you write all these things happen, and then you write a story. And she did it, and it went on the front page, the first ever front page story. And later on, after we'd finished talking about the interview, she had her book. She was selling it. The Speakers Festival is at Misnomer. They try and sell their books there. And she said to Stuart and Leslie in the book, to Stuart and Leslie, and at the bottom she says, "Thank you for teaching me how to write a story."
Is she heading towards the States?
Who?
Christina.
No, it's not. Emma is the one who's going to the States.
Right.
No, she was another one of these Financial Times whiz kids, and she worked her way out. She was born in Lewis, right? And she had a school magazine and all the rest of it. And then she got a job with the Financial Times. And eventually, and she had very good postings, and eventually she got onto the Times, and then the Sunday Times. She was editor of the Sunday Times. And that was almost unimaginable for someone like that, the rest of it. And now, according to Christina, she wasn't at the festival because she's gone off to be editor of the Wall Street Journal, which is another bleeding Murdoch paper, for God's sake. And I actually found out in my little researches that of the Murdoch empire of newspapers, I don't know if it's just in America, its value, I think it might be all over the place, the value of his newspaper empire is £28 billion. And of that, 10 billion is accounted for by the Wall Street Journal. And I remember back in the day when I was doing it, the war stuff and all the rest of it, the Wall Street Journal guy, Peter Gray, I think his name was the editor. It's always been a great paper, but I don't know whether, Murdoch's done his damage to it. Perhaps you know better. I don't know.
Well, Melissa, I think that is something that we could ask you.
Yeah.
How has the face of American journalism changed with the newspapers, or has it? And actually, I mean, we do hear, Rupert Murdoch's got the Sun, and how he's destroyed journalism and so on and so forth. What is the media scene there in the United States now?
Well, yeah, I mean, we have the same opinion of Murdoch here. However, he, oddly enough, kind of became a bit of an adversary with Trump.
Well, that's absolutely right. Sorry, just to interrupt. Sorry to interrupt. But apparently, the New York Post actually dumped on Trump, and everybody
still
said,
does.
"Oh, well,
it still does."
Yes, and that's put Trump out of business, because here, for example, Tony Blair, when he wanted to get in the Labour Party, went on hands and knees to Murdoch, begging him to actually support the Labour Party. And I think that having the New York Post against him, which is a lowly, it's a Murdoch type paper, isn't it? They pander to lowest common prejudice and all that kind of thing. And is that the case, do you think? That he's done Trump in, basically?
I don't know if he's done Trump in, but I don't know if two rags are going to do it. Well, I guess I shouldn't call the Wall Street Journal a rag, but I think, listen, if you're touting whatever your leader is telling you to say, you're a rag, okay? Stand up. Stand up. As a journalist, you should stand up and say, I'm not writing this trash. But enough. I mean, when are we going to have journalists that are going to stand up and say, no, this is the story. This is what it is. I'm not going to be influenced by you. But, it's all about paychecks. I guess it's all about your paycheck and about your ego and about, I'm with the Wall Street Journal. I'm with the New York Post. Who cares?
Well, but the fact is, I'm so glad that I said most of my career, I've written for the Observer, the Guardian, and the Statesman, and all the rest of them. Having worked for the Financial Times for 36 years has been an absolute joy for me, because when I joined it, and Gordon Newton was very, very particular, it was all about companies then. And if you got anything wrong, he threatened to fire you. So we developed what was on the one hand and what's on the other hand style. Like, you can understand that York Mining has had lots of problems with shareholders because, but on the other hand, at the end, you just wrote a sort of a situation of what the story was, and you didn't have an opinion. You didn't push people. Now, a lot of people thought that was bland, but I have to say, I mean, I would go to Vietnam and all the Americans would say, "What's the Financial Times doing here?" And I said, "Well, look," I said, "Why don't actually push out things like Murdoch does or the Telegraph does? We just write absolutely balanced stories." It's true.
Well,
So
I mean,
what is
I worked for the Associated Press for 10 years.
Yeah.
And while I'm not so crazy about some of the things that have come out of it lately, you absolutely had to be balanced. Why? Because our clients were both liberal and Democrat. They were both liberal and conservative. So you had to write for a general audience. You couldn't just come out with an opinion piece. Another thing I was always concerned with was adjectives. You better watch what your adjectives are. In fact, I rarely wrote them, quite frankly. I really had to scrub it out of there. You know, listen, I've angered Democrats and I've angered Republican, leaders. I don't know if you want to call them that, politicians. I didn't care. It's the story. You have to inform the public. That's what you're there for. You're not there for your byline. You're not there for your face on air. Like, look at the bigger picture, folks. It's just like the leadership. They're not looking at the bigger picture. They're looking at themselves.
Well, you're with the right organization with Mirador, because the local politicians won't talk to us because we have a real go at them, and they are so pompous and so full of their own self-importance. Any suggestion of puncturing that is everything else goes out of the window. It doesn't matter how incompetent they are.
Keith and I are very, very good at deflating reputations. No, but actually, Melissa, the Financial Times is the paper of the day now. I mean, I joined it a lifetime ago when it was just a little financial rag, but now, because there's money, because it's global, you can buy some very, very good writers. And the FT now is really a good paper, fantastic. These big reads are fantastic, aren't they, Keith?
I think oftentimes, though, one of the problems is money.
Yeah, of course it is.
It's about, you have to serve your CEO. Can't make them look bad. You got to serve your shareholders, right? And so this is where the problem lies. This is where, in television, for example, here in the US, and in radio, when it was deregulated and the broadcast licenses were given out like toasters, depending on how much you pay for them, it just ceased to become a public service. It's just a microphone for the opinions of the wealthy who have the money and can buy the property.
Yeah, but everybody's scared of Murdoch, and what he does is he panders to the lowest common project. He titillates, he then actually stokes up fears, and that's the way he gets these orders. But I will say this from Murdoch, he does know what people the hoi polloi, right? What the Victorians used to call the lower orders. He does actually know what they will read, whereas Maxwell didn't have a clue.
I mean, how hard? Listen, how hard could that be? What do we have? Sex, drugs, crime. What else? How hard is that to figure that out? That's what people seem to want to read.
I don't know. Yeah, all right, maybe they do, but I can't bear writing celebrity news and so forth and so on. And it's their own decision. I mean, if you think that all you want to read, if you just want to read crime, sex, and God jollity, well, I don't read those kind of papers. Yeah, I don't want to. Don't need to.
But I will say this, Melissa. I don't want to put Mirador television out of perspective, but we had while he was still able, Mark Landsman. And if you say Walter Cronkite, you say Mark Landsman. And he contributed to us for a couple of years because you and I worked with him when he was at the height of his career. The funny thing is that people remember Mark because he didn't give us sex. and he didn't give us celebrity. He gave us straight from the shoulder what is going on in the White House, which he understood very well. What was, and I mean, there's a wonderful clip that we have where he says of Trump, he says, "You held up a Bible. You held it upside down." Bible. I mean, how do you nicely puncture somebody at that level?
But I mean, am I really a tiny minutia interested in how many whores Wayne Rooney has gone out with? Or, I'm not particularly interested in the size of Kim Kardashian's bum. I mean, I just don't want to know about these things.
Large.
But I also think that you're absolutely right. I am not a great admirer at the moment of present day journalism. It's the journalists of the mid 1970s really had a great feel for what was right and what was proper. And if I can just give you just a little vignette. When I was at the BBC in Northern Ireland, there was a producer who was doing a very, very important documentary, and it meant that he got to start filming in New York. And he got wind of the fact that the powers that be were going to pull his budget. So he got on a plane, went to New York, and then phoned them from there and said, right, I've just started filming on this project. What do you want me to do next? I can't imagine anybody doing that today. They would be far too cap in hand.
Yeah, you have to be fearless. You have to be fearless. You really do. I see too much cowardice all the time. That's it. Once you're a fearless person, they'll bow to you. They will. Because you have confidence in yourself and you don't care. You have to not care.
They sent us to commentary here, but the people like us.
I don't care. You don't like me. I don't care. I don't care.
Just Stuart and I are up to date, because one of the very, very useful things that you do is you do give us a little bit of a background on what's happened in the week since we talked to you last, which helps us put in perspective some of the things that are happening here. So what's happened over the past 7 days?
Oh, you mean in the news or in my life?
Both.
Both.
Because they both reflect important stuff.
Oh, yeah, definitely your life. What have you been up to?
My life. Oh, goodness. If you guys would, well, this might be a good time for you guys to take a nap. Sure, I'll tell you all about it. It's just, I don't know. I work. I had a party this weekend. It was to celebrate my birthday. And they spelled my name wrong on the cake. They spelled it was from my friend Jeff.
Did you put the baker's head in it or what?
It was for 3 of us. It was for myself, my friend Jeff, and my friend Joan. And they spelled my name wrong, Melissa, and they spelled Jeff. They spelled it Tiff, and then they left off Joan's name. I'm like, this cake better taste good, So, but yeah, it was a lot of fun. And it was funny because actually a lot of my friends from my old radio days were there. Jeff is one of them, and they are brutal. These guys, these men are so brutal the way they talk about people, and I'm like, oh, she's this or he's that. I'm looking at them. I'm like, guys, let me take a picture of you, and then you'll shut up. Okay, because you're nothing to look at either.
My wife's birthday today.
Oh, it's Leslie's birthday.
Yeah. So
happy birthday!
Happy birthday! This morning, then tomorrow, friends of ours coming over, and we're going to the David Bowie tribute band at the Con Club on Saturday.
Nice, very nice. That's fun.
That's
great.
I don't know what will happen on Sunday, though.
Yeah.
That will be
that sounds great.
Overhung day.
Now, the 3 of us have a very strange link, because when you were here last, you spent a bit of time at the Travellers Club. Stuart is a former member, and I'm a member, and I use it as an example of
I'm
where,
clearly not a member. Okay.
no, that's a bit of controversial, but
You know
I
what?
mean,
I'm going to be honest.
you've been there,
I
you've
don't.
experienced it. But I hold
I
it up as a paragon of where there is courtesy, decency, kindness, and consideration. Would
yes.
you go along with that?
Well, I agree with all that, but it's also it's a bit sort of hoity-toity and a bit sort of.
See,
I mean,
he and I disagree on elitism.
well, look, basically, it was a foreign desk, foreign. No, it was just a cafeteria for the diplomats, wasn't it? Basically,
Yes.
yeah. And it was all a bit, a bit high. It was all a bit. We're the most interesting people in the world and all that kind of thing. Yeah, it was just
it's when you think you're the most interesting person in the world. That's when you become uninteresting. Seriously.
Yeah, no, it was a bit stuffy, but what it was good at, if you wanted to sort of take somebody important to lunch there, you got 2 bites of the cherry, because first you gave them lunch, and then secondly you took them into the tea room, which meant they could get pissed, not drink tea, and you get out of them exactly what you wanted to know. Anyway, in fact, also they've published 2 books from which I've got loads of pieces in travel books.
Right. I have to read it's in that book, correct? It's a compilation of I have to read your I'd like to read it's probably there. When I come in May, I'd like to read it. So
well, the first one, the Tales of the Travelers, was out of print now, but the other one, More Tales of the Travelers Club, is probably available. Yeah,
right.
In that one. Well,
okay.
It was about a story how I went from Fez to Fez from in Morocco.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it was really quite a good story.
I was hoping to go to Fez for this music festival, maybe next year. So
I'll tell you something. Travel writing is a very, very good job if you can possibly get it. One of my last jobs for the Financial Times was travel writing, and it's just so good.
Yeah, all the hotels give you hotel rooms free.
Well, no, not only that. But, no. Middle East Airlines.
These two.
Middle East Airlines went bust, and Lord Hesketh bought it out and called it Mediterranean Airlines. And we got all these sort of things, like places like Georgia, Rajasthan, Azerbaijan, and all these kind of places, because it was they wanted the planes. They gave us that concession, so they wanted the planes to go to New York. And we went to Georgia one day to Tbilisi, which is the leader, and it was just after the breakup of the Soviet Union.
Oh,
and who was do you remember the foreign secretary? What was his name? I can't remember. Anyway, there was a famous hotel there called something or other as well, and you went up there and it said sidearms may be taken in. Automatic weapons must be left at the door. And you got all the mafia groups together and had them killed off so that he could become president.
Well, the list after that is some colleagues that both of you would know were in Goa, and they belong to various clubs, and they went to the Goa club, and people were in shorts and so on because of the heat and so on, and so they dressed appropriately. They went to have dinner and they were stopped for being inappropriately dressed. They had to wear socks.
I went to Goa before. Listen, I went to Goa before it was actually discovered. It was the most amazing place to go to. I can't tell you. It was incredibly nice. Yeah, I wouldn't go to see all these. I mean, what I keep saying to Keith is, I used to go to these places when they were real paradises, but I wouldn't want to go anymore. I mean, if you went to Bali, you'd be on Sattar Beach where it's full of Australians. Who wants to mix with them? But I did go. So to Bali, I was invited to take a cooking course, and we went up to a place called Candid Jasa, right at the top. and it was just perfect. It was absolutely, yeah. And then also Sri Lanka was wonderful places to go there.
We're talking about travel. Bring us up to date with Connor. Who is? I found 2 more programs which I'm putting together to show of Connor's cooking expertise with Melissa. But he is working for NHK as a foreign correspondent. So how's he doing?
Actually, he just came back from a story. He was out in Idaho and Oregon, and a part of Oregon wants to become part of Idaho. Because, Oregon, as you know, you got Portland, you got these major cities on the West Coast, and they're not doing well. I do have some liberal opinions, but, it's being taken over by homeless people everywhere. Yeah, that's where they come. And so, I'm sorry?
Is it against the Constitution to break up the states?
Well, they're looking for an exception, obviously. They just don't feel like they're part of, because part of Oregon is very rural, and so you're taxing them as though they're urban. It's just, it doesn't work, or you're enacting laws that just don't match up with the life. Part of Oregon looks very much like Idaho in terms of the landmass. It's just the way it is. And so they just want to be left alone. These people, they just want to be left alone. Stop taxing us so much. We don't get the services. And it's an issue. It's this fight between, and I don't know that you all have as much of an issue with it because you don't have as much, your country's far smaller. But in our country, you've got people living out in the middle of nowhere. You can't, it's very difficult to have the same rules that you would in the city out there in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, but we haven't got a middle of nowhere. We haven't got.
You don't have a middle of nowhere, but we do. So it's become an issue. So he went out to do that story, and he just came back, and I don't know what it is.
We've got some.
I'm sorry.
We have got some remoteness in Scotland and places like that, but it's a small island, basically islands.
Right.
It's not overcrowded. I mean, when you think about it, 60 million people in this country.
Yeah.
Well, it's.
Yeah, so I would imagine more people, more problems.
Yeah.
It's just what we humans do. We create problems.
And how is his ambition to fly faster than sound aircraft?
He is meeting with the Marines on Wednesday, and we'll see how that goes. It's a choice between the Navy or the Marines. And so he has certain requirements that he has to meet, very high requirements. So for the Navy, it's a written test and a test of agility with the, the airplane machinery. I don't know what those things are called.
Aren't the Marines the elite? Aren't the Marines the elite?
I wouldn't say they're the elite as much as they're tough. I mean, they're always the first in. So they're going to give the first to give cover. They're going to be the first on the ground. So they're tough. There's a physical toughness that Connor has to achieve. And so he's working out. And actually, I'm going down to the gym. We have a gym in our building. I go down with him, and I get on the treadmill too. And so
oh my God, I want to see that.
I've gotten up to a half a mile. My goal is to get to a mile, and then I'll just coast. And then I might go back to doing karate. I don't know. We'll see. But I have to build myself up. I think it really is. I have to have an image in my mind that I can do it, right? Because if you have an image in your mind right now, and maybe you're not an athlete, but you want to be, right? You have to do what an athlete does. And that means they work out consistently, right? Well, so I've got to get myself, I got to keep saying to myself, I'm an athlete. It's just it's not resonating just yet. But
it's discipline, isn't it? I mean, actually, you wouldn't think he was much of an athlete, but he disciplines himself to write 500 words every morning on his.
Well, because Stewart in Stewart's mind, Stewart is a writer. That's it. There's no one going to convince him of anything else. But if Stewart all of a sudden also wanted to be an athlete, Stewart would have to discipline his mind to say to himself, I am an athlete. Because if you don't, you're not going to do it. So that's really what it's about. It's about controlling your mind in terms of what you want to be. But you got to be at first up here, right?
Yes.
Or it's not going to translate.
Because when I was younger, I lacked self-confidence. I didn't, I had no sort of idea of becoming a journalist or becoming a writer. I just didn't cross my mind, and I just fell into it somehow. People say, "What journalism?" In those days there were no journalism.
You fall into it. No, I agree
I think
with
it's
you.
one of those things you actually fall into.
That particular, so you fall into it, and maybe you don't have all that confidence just yet, but then it sparks something in you, and you're like, no, I want to do this. Once you say that with that kind of, yes, I'm doing this, I really like this, then the discipline kind of falls into place. But until then, it's mediocrity at best.
But you discover being a journalist other things. It's part journalist, it's part historian, it's part historian, it's part detective, it's part researcher. There's all kinds of aspects to it all, and it's very, very interesting.
And a lot of drinking.
I agree.
Well, that's not so
Well,
much
I started as a radio DJ playing music. And so, but I saw what the reporters were doing and I thought it was exciting. And I said, oh, well, let me try it. And my first go at it was horrible. It was a 30-second, radio spot. And it took me 3 hours to write it. I didn't know what to do because nobody sat there and told me. So I was a joke. I was a joke in the beginning, I got to tell you.
Oh, yeah. We were all the same. I can remember the very first piece that I did in Vancouver for the BBC. And I've got the tape somewhere. And when I really want to bring myself down to earth, I dig it out. Today in Toronto, I can't believe that they ever let it on the air.
We never got any tutelage because there were only two places which had journalist schools. I mean, it was just
people didn't have the time. They didn't have the time they didn't take the time to sit and talk to us. We just had to observe and just take it in. Really, it was bad. And what I used to do is I used to listen to the best news radio station, and I would listen to my tapes and I'd say, okay, what's the difference? And I had to teach myself essentially. So I was like, oh, she emphasized this word. Oh, she's emphasizing verbs. Oh, okay. I really had to dissect it, and then I became better. But it's a lot of self-teaching.
I was never told to read. Sorry, I was never told what to write. How to write it.
Yeah.
All that kind of, you just
exactly. You have to look at what's been done and replicate it to a certain extent, and then you put your own, flair in it. But that's how you do it. You have to look at what the greats have done. I was like, okay, that's how they did it. Let me see what I can do. How can I apply it to my situation? So that's how I learned.
Sorry, we did some mentoring. I did some mentoring at Sussex University with another guy who works for The Guardian. And his mantra was that once you've got the first line, you've got 1,000 words. And that's
absolutely.
About it,
Yeah, it's what to put in that first paragraph.
Yes, exactly.
And they always tell you, write to a 6th grade level. Like, okay, I think I could do that.
Yeah, he used to say that everything is in that first paragraph. And first paragraph, then you take, and then you go right through the story as it happened. Because story. It's like a storytelling, isn't it?
Yes, that's essentially what it is. But you're also looking at it from the point of view of somebody who maybe they're going to look at the newspaper, they're on the train, maybe they're going to spend 6 seconds looking at your story, so you better make it good in the first paragraph.
Yeah.
I will say this, that our experiences jointly are very interesting to people who aren't journalists. Normally, for instance, Stuart and I will go for a glass of wine once we finish on this program, and there are people in the other bar who are there, and it's almost become a club. And they more or less say, "Oh, Stuart, tell us more of your stories," and I have to fill in during the week when he's not there. And they do find it fascinating that we are almost free spirits.
Yes.
At least
Yes.
we are. I'm not so sure about the modern generation of journalists.
Right, let me quickly tell you a story. Back in the day, in the Elephant and Castle pub, I was sitting down, and then the soprano from the Glyndebourne Opera came along, and then also the pianist came along, and then the director came along. I was giving them all the stories about the war and this, that, and so forth and so on. And I thought I'd let it go. Next morning, I got an email from the pianist. He said, "Would you like 2 tickets for the dress rehearsal of The Marriage of Figaro?" I said, "Right, bloody hell, they're gold dust." So I went back across the road to my wife and said, "Leslie," I said, "Anyway, Leslie, look, my storytelling does bring in dividends." She said, "Yes, but not when people have heard them 700 times.
I like that.
Right now, it is. I know that you have to go off to work in about 10 minutes, and Stuart is going to give us, which is fairly domestic, the latest situation on energy. So, Melissa, I'm going to say goodbye to you. How lovely it is to have you on as usual.
Yeah.
And if we don't see you before, we'll most certainly see you next Friday, I hope.
Yes, and I'll see you all in May, hopefully.
Oh, we're looking forward to that. And this
although I do have a lot of appointments with the king, so I'll have to see.
Listen,
the king has to come first. I'm sorry.
Yes, but you just tell him that you've got to spend time with me, and he'll give you a dispensation. Kind regards to Connor, and tell him to keep up the good work as a journalist. And I do hope he fulfills the ambition of flying overhead without us even knowing it.
Okay. Have a good day, guys. Have a great weekend. Enjoy yourselves, and stay safe.
Thank you, darling.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay. It's always very good to.
Can I get another cup of coffee?
No, you're not off the air. You're going to have to go straight in.
All right. Okay.
So, Stuart, as everybody knows, is not only a first-class journalist and a great storyteller, but he has become such an expert in the energy field that he was calling the shots of what was happening in energy a good 6 or 7 weeks before anybody else was. And he's getting really upset that in many ways what's happening in the energy field is still being fairly well hidden or not reported properly. So he's going to carry on from there.
Yeah, okay, fine. Okay, yeah, this is Stuart Dorby, as you obviously heard, and I do this occasional series of Energy Matters, and it drives me up. Now, this one, I'm taking bits from the story I've written for my own website, greenbarrow.com, and it's called, "It Looks Like the Energy Crisis is Moving Towards a Perfect Storm." Okay, now I'm not actually reading all this text, but here we go. A year ago, in 1922 to 2022, British Gas, a part of the Centrica Group and a member of the Big Six cartel of retail energy suppliers, which dominated energy supply to the tune of 70% of the customers in the UK. They announced from January 1 to June 30 to 2022, this is British Gas, it had made a gross profit of 1.12 billion in 6 months. Given that British Gas had previously pleaded poverty to people at Ofgem, the government regulator, what was it going to do with all this money? Was it going to invest in gas reserves? Or was it going to give relief to the poorest customers? Well, none of this happened. Instead, it became public that Chris O'Shea, the CEO of British Gas, received an annual salary of 2 million quid. On top of that, a lot of profits went to shareholders. Outrageous, in my opinion. Many people found that this kind of disbursement of the profits to the directors and shareholders as just sheer profiteering. Fast forward to Wednesday, February 15th this year, and you'll find that Centrica, and by extension British Gas, announced that their preliminary results for the whole year of 2022 amounted to 3.3 billion. This is easily double the 6 months of interims ending on June 30. Since shareholders and poor customers therefore can easily see that the British Gas are in a very good shape financially, that they can perhaps conclude that the profiteering might intensify further. Moreover, they might also conclude that intensified profiteering might easily augment a perfect storm. A perfect storm is a critical or disastrous situation brought on by a concurrence of various factors, according to Google. The month of February, which is where we are now, are clearly seeing, people in the month of February, as we see, are clearly seeing a mild form of a perfect storm on the energy front, which is not welcome. Unfortunately, however, British Gas has brought in some new bad factors. Would you believe it? The company has employed contractors who forced their way into the poor people's homes to try to redeem unpaid debts and also to install prepayment meters. Again, this is even more outrageous. This is bad enough, as installing prepayments is a form of extortion to get people to pay their bills. But there is more. On the front page of the business section of the Sunday Times edition of February 12, there was a blazing headline which said, "Scandal of the Group, Scandal of the Energy Brokers." In a subtitle, the story went on, middlemen probed over payments from power giants, i.e. the cartel of big six suppliers, signing up SMEs, which are small and medium businesses, businesses. But what was I saying? Middleman probed up, so small businesses. Okay, the energy regulator, it said, following this, the energy regulator is gearing up for a crackdown on energy brokers that are ripping off small businesses during the cost of living crisis. Ofgem is understood to be working with the government to look at options to regulate brokers that arrange electricity and gas contracts for small businesses. It is further understood that London lawyers Marcus Parker and Lee Day may begin a potential class action lawsuit against suppliers not disclosing commission paid to lawyers. Now, if that does not all mean that we are in a perfect storm, what does it bloody well mean? Sorry the swear word. It's more than a perfect storm. It's a calamity we're in. A very bad calamity that we're in because of all this neo-corruption and profiteering that's going on. And all these companies are making fortunes when people are dying because of the cold. It really, really.
Absolutely.
Wouldn't you agree?
I think it's outrageous.
Yeah.
I really do. I think to be quite honest with you, our society has gone 20 paces backwards from the 1950s, when we were all poor because of the war.
Yeah.
And I see no difference.
Well, I don't agree with that side. What I do agree with is this, that Boris Johnson, when he was a prime minister, was canny enough to actually pack his cabinet with second-rate people.
Yeah.
Because he thought one of them might usurp him. Well, it didn't last very long. And
one of the second-raters is now prime minister.
Right. So, and we were left with second-rate people, none of whom, in my opinion, is capable of running the country. There is nobody capable of running the country. We're in a very, very, very difficult position now. Where who knows what Keir Starmer was? Who knows? Even knows he's going to win the next election. Yeah. It's disgraceful. It's horrible. It's terrible.
Stuart, you and I are of one on this. There is nobody capable of running the country. But when you get into situations like this, where in many ways the watchdog stops watching, is do you think that because people are greedy, I mean the MPs, 150 grand exit fee.
Well, no, and also they're only jumped up social workers anyway.
Well, you made that point before, and I agree with you. But tell me, is that this is when corruption starts to take hold? I mean, okay, there is always corruption, but generally speaking, because of the nature of both our people and our means of governance, is we haven't had huge corruption. But do you think that it's busy piling in?
Well, I would have thought so. It started off really with the expenses scandal, which the Sunday Telegraph. What's his name? Not Quentin Hogg, Douglas Hogg, getting actually money to build a moat around his country house.
Yeah.
Well, blimey, where does it stop?
Yeah.
All these second home things that they get. Well, and Boris getting his office decorated by it is corruption, all of it.
Yeah. I mean, actually, one of the interesting things about that is that there was a big hoo-ha, and there was a review of what they could claim and what they couldn't. Very quietly, about 2 months ago, they changed it back again so that they can get exactly what they did before.
Well, first Keir Starmer, who was CPS, you know what that is, isn't it?
Yes.
Criminal.
Yeah, right.
Criminal
prosecution service, yeah.
Well, yeah, perhaps he could arrest a few people.
Yeah, but I mean,
a few Tories.
Yeah, but when you've got actually a group that are all looking after themselves, is the likelihood of reform taking place is unlikely, isn't it?
Well, who's going to reform them?
Exactly.
Who's going to do it?
Exactly. But in other parts of the world, there comes a crunch where you've never hit that situation before, and what happens is there's an explosion and nobody knows what's going to happen. I mean, I'm thinking of Russia in 1914-15. Do you think that we're going to see an explosion like that?
I wasn't there. Sorry.
Sorry,
I wasn't there.
No, but I mean, there's a change of government from a monarchy to.
I don't think really these days Britain's in a revolutionary sentiment. I mean, I don't think it is. I mean, I know there's protests and there's peaceful protests, and sometimes it gets out of hand, and some of these protests are very legitimate and very good, but really they're pretty peaceful on the whole. And we don't actually have revolutions here, do we?
No, we don't. And I've always argued that that's because of the constitutional monarchy. But what I would say to you is that if somebody like you, as astute as you, and knowledgeable, are saying, no, I don't think it's going to happen, that's what the establishment is saying. Yeah, it's not going to happen. So they're not going to change their ways. So the sort of thing that is making you angry at the moment is likely to be making you angry in another 2 years or 3 years' time.
Well, I did actually get Ukraine wrong. I didn't think he would go in, but he did.
Yeah. Well, I actually kept saying
he was going to be a war.
Yeah. I mean, having spent a bit of time in Russia, I understand the mentality, particularly of people like Putin.
Well, I was actually right that he's not going to win it, isn't he? I mean,
that you are right, and but he's causing a hell of a lot of a problem, is he not?
Well, yeah, he is. But I mean, all these dictators come to earth at the end of the day, don't they?
Yeah. Now, I think that you've made the point very clearly, and it does worry me because I think that we've got to have reform somewhere, and how it's going to come, I don't know. But one of the things that you do that is very, very pertinent to reform, if you like, is in the people that you interview. You Stuart Dolby interviews in conversations it's become a very important part of our society here, because you bring in top class people. Who have you got in mind to bring in say the next 2 to 3 months?
Well, I thought I wanted to ask for Olivia O'Leary in Ireland if she would like to talk, because she is a great journalist, She happens to be godmother of one of my children. I got to know her a very long time, well, and early, and she is the top journalist in Ireland. And given that this whole chaos with the protocol, I don't even know what it is. Do you? All I can understand is that they want to change the border in the sea back onto the land, just to keep the Good Friday Agreement. But it's I consider myself a reasonably intelligent person, but this one's got me.
Well, I mean, particularly since both you and I have spent considerable time in Northern Ireland, we had difficulty in understanding it when we were there. But now I do not understand what the objections are. It seems to me fairly clear.
Yeah. Well, I think Jerry Adams' accent was a bit difficult to understand.
Yeah. But I mean, if we talk about
used to say, yeah. When he used to say, "Merry chopsticks, Merry Kerry Christmas."
But actually, I mean, I suppose we are talking about an area where still some resolution comes with violence. I mean, can we see that replicated?
Well, I don't know. I mean, if you're talking about Ireland, it was an 800-year fight, wasn't it? You know, it was bound at the end of the day to end in violence, because it was people like that. It was another one was Macarius in Cyprus, and he used to say, "Without violence, you're not going to win." And I think the IRA came to that conclusion. It's no use talking around the table. You've got to actually take action. And I don't know whether I believe that or not, because I think sometimes negotiation can actually resolve these problems, but it's very rare, isn't it? Don't you think?
Shall I help make your head swell? Melissa has gone off from and ready to go to work, but she sent through on our comment page, "So great to speak to such kind gentlemen. Have a wonderful week." So there you are. That's where we'll leave it for today. And we will, Stuart will be back with, as he gets both news to talk about, and he gets his conversations sorted, you'll be seeing more of him. And I think that actually our new format lends itself to having the sort of conversations that we can have much better than the old one. But let us say toodle pip for today. We'll be back on Monday morning, and we'll look forward to seeing everybody. Say goodbye, Stuart.
Bye-bye.
Toodle pip.
Toodle pip.